I find it interesting and often humorous the different ways that people will argue depending on which side of an argument that they're on. So, for instance, as secularists will often be quick to point out when someone on the other side of the great debate is using an ad hominem attack, attempting to discredit an argument by discrediting the person making the argument. You know, sort of the insinuation there is if you can make that person look bad, then you don't have to deal with the argument, which is, of course, fallacious. The argument needs to stand on its own. But what I've noticed quite often is if there is a character, however unsavory, secularists will use ad hominem attacks as well if they wish to discredit the argument that this person is making. So, for instance, a few people have noticed over the year and some year and a half or whatever that I've been on YouTube that I have clicked like on a couple of Stefan Molyneux videos. Somebody even said to me once, "I see you have a fondness for a certain YouTube philosopher," which is quite unfair, without inquiring to find out what I actually think. There are a lot of things that I think he gets wrong. So I don't agree with him on every point. I do think that he's right in saying there's no such thing as my philosophy or your philosophy. There's just philosophy. So if I'm going to say I disagree with him on something, really what I've got to say is I think he got it wrong. I think, his argument doesn't hold water. But he does get a lot of things right. Now, I've noticed a lot of people like to disregard him. A lot of it has to do with his stance on what they call defooing, or separating from your family of origin. FOO, right? Family of origin. For reasons of severe unrepentant abuse is usually the reason that the case is made that you should disconnect from an unrepentant abuser, which I think that's an easy case to be made, but some people have a very big problem with that, and they think that he's running some sort of a cult, whatever. But aside from all of that, the arguments still stand on their own. And so I would ask you, as we go through what I'm about to present, to deal with the arguments. Let's not deal with the personality here. Now, I've made the case in the past, and we've discussed it a little bit on my channel, for an objective secular morality. And we haven't gotten very deep into it. I know that most secularists tend to be moral relativists, and they sort of feel that morality is a subjective issue. And the video that I'm going to link below, and I'll timestamp it because there's two parts to the video. The first part isn't that relevant. Is one where I think Stefan Molyneux makes a great case for the need for and the existence of an objective set of secular standards. Now, he does this in he's got his own book, which he has written on secular ethics. I think he makes a good case for it. There are some holes in the theory, which personally I believe there are holes in the theory, but I think that just illuminates the need to investigate it further. Many hands make light work. Because I think there can be a case made for objective secular morality, but also I think there's a need for it. Because otherwise, I think we wallow around, and I think we're floundering without an objective set of secular ethics. And I think a case can be made for them. And I think the religious among us, when we talk about morality being subjective, have a valid point to make in criticizing us for that. Obviously, their objective morality actually is not objective, but that's not what this video is about. So, in the video I link below, Stefan Molyneux basically makes the case, he verbalizes it better than I could, is something I've thought for a long time, that secular moral relativists, anybody who says, hey, morality is subjective, are hypocritical in the way they raise their children, because nobody raises their children that way, right? We teach our children objective set of secular ethics. Now, you might say that you are just forwarding your subjective preferences upon them, but this is hypocritical. I mean, who are you to do that? If morality is truly subjective, who are you to impose your subjective set of ethics on somebody else, right? But what we do is we teach a set of ethics to our children that are probably along the lines of what a good objective moral code would be, right? You don't take what doesn't belong to you. You don't hit Sally, etc., etc. You don't impose force on other people. You don't coerce other people. You don't take what doesn't belong to you. And then we'll turn around as secularists and talk about morality being subjective. And this is highly hypocritical. To go a step further, to show how hypocritical this is, not only are we willing to impose a set of objective standards on our children, but we'll do it via force, right? The rates of spanking in North America are still, I believe, over 80%. So we'll use physical force to impose that set of objective ethics on our children. We don't say, hey, do it or don't do it. I mean, what feels right to you, right? Additionally, the hypocrisy doesn't stop there, because then we don't often behave along those same guidelines. The same objective set of ethics that we impose through threats of violence on our children, we don't abide by ourselves. We say, it's not right to take what doesn't belong to you. It's not right to impose force or coercion on other people. And then we have governments, we have wars, right? And there are many instances in our adult world where we violate the very objective moral code that we impose through threats of violence on our children. It's highly hypocritical. And I'm sure there are many of you who are already, I should have put the trigger warning probably on this video, but what I would urge you to do is to look at this calmly and rationally and ask yourself that hard question. Am I teaching my children a hard moral code, an objective set of ethics that I'm not willing to abide by? Or am I being a hypocrite by promoting that morality is all subjective while instilling a set of objective standards into my children, potentially through force? I think, I think a very easy case can be made for an objective set of ethics, especially on the morally heavyweight issues. I'm not talking about preferences here. I'm talking about the rape, murder, theft, that sort of thing. But more importantly, I think we need it. I think the religious among us actually have a good case when they critique or criticize someone saying that that morality is subjective. Now, of course, that case breaks down when we look at the religious morality, because it is actually not objective either. We seem to have this disconnect when it comes to morality, because we will say, for instance, the slavery issue is an easy one to use. Because most secularists, I think just about all of them today, would admit, or agree, I should say, that slavery is morally wrong. But at one time, it was considered to be okay. In fact, almost virtuous. I mean, we knew that the economy, depended on slavery. So it was a good thing. How do we say that it's not a good thing today? Unless we are admitting that we are slowly approaching a moral ideal. There are many things that, the subjugation of women, rights of women and children, rights of minorities, etc., that have all changed. We can't say that those are good or bad, right or wrong, unless we're admitting that we're approaching some sort of a moral standard, a moral ideal. Then it all starts to make sense. If we admit to having there be some sort of an objective set of standards, then it makes sense. Without that, it doesn't make any sense. Then we might as well just continue to cater to multiculturalism, even when that multiculturalism has to do with things like, honor killings and things like that, and genital mutilation. The list goes on. Who are we to criticize people in the Middle East who won't allow their daughters to go to school on, potentially threats of murder, of killing them over it, and, any other thing, unless we are alluding to an objective standard. Because if it's all subjective, we've got no beef. And we certainly have no right to impose our morality, our moral standards on our children. So, food for thought, trigger warning, time to set this channel on fire. I had a good holiday. Thanks everyone for watching.